This is episode 5 in our podcast on Bikva Sa'ira by Rabbi Avrohom Kaplan, and we're starting a new mimer today, Chokhmas HaUmos for Chokhmas VeYisrael, the wisdom of the nation of the world and the wisdom of the Jewish people. And you can find this at hdas.org /RAEK / this is a little bit convoluted, but the title is doesn't transliterate so well. CHOKHMAS HAUMOS VeYisrael. That's all one word. .pdf. That's Chokhmas HaUmos VeYisrael. And again, to spell that out, CHOKHMAS. That's Chokhmas. HAUMOS, HaUmos. VeYisrael, VeYisrael. .pdf. If you just go to the hdas.org /RAEK page, it's probably much easier just to click on the file. In any event, his next mimer in week was here after time the stage rocking one we did. And of course, coming to Berlin from Slobodka, from Telz and Slobodka, Rabbi Avrohom was confronted with the issue of Chokhmas HaUmos, the wisdom of the nations of the world, which obviously for German Jews was a big issue, much more than Lithuanian Jews, although at that time for Lithuanian Jews it was already an issue. My grandfather, Zatzal, Rabbi Shachet, who as we know is close to Rabbi Avrohom, asked for permission somewhat later in the mid-1920s to go to Lemberg, to Lvov, to university from Telz, and according to family lore, Rabbi Yosef Bloch, the Telz Rosh Yeshiva, gave him permission to do so, and he called him back shortly before my grandfather accomplished a degree, and however long that took back then. And when my grandfather asked why he was summoned back, Rabbi Yosef said, because I wanted to make sure you were doing it lishma, not l'shem the degree. And there's a fascinating series of chuvas, one of which is printed in the back of the most famous one, the back of Birkas Shmuel on Kiddushin, but several others, one from Rabbi Chonan and one from Rabbi Rogachover, another from Rabbi Yosef Leib, about Limudei Chol, which were asked by, as Baruch Ber puts it, Shoah Mi Medina Yedua, a question from a well-known country, and that well-known country was Germany, and the questioner was Rav Schwab. And Rav Schwab obviously went in the other direction. He went from Germany to Telz, and clearly he was conflicted about Toim Derech Eretz and the Masorah in Germany, that Chokhmas Ulam had significance to them. And therefore he asked these Gedolei Torah in Eastern Europe what their opinion was about the correlation between Limudei Chol and Avodas Hashem, or Limudei Kodesh, would be. And they answered what they answered. Without getting into today, it's not our topic. But we should note a very important distinction, which always exists between the Misnagdim and the Hasidim. The Gra in the Hakdama to Pasuk Shulchan is quoted by his Talmud as having said that the more a person is lacking in his knowledge of Chokhmas HaUmos, the more he's going to lack an understanding of Torah. So there's a fundamental understanding in the Misnagdish world, personifying the Gra, that one has to have a grounding in Chokhmas HaUmos in order to fully understand Torah properly. And the Gra is known to have been exceedingly diligent in this, and have studied all branches of wisdom, as we laid there in the Pasuk Shulchan, except for medicine, because his father told him he should not study medicine, because if he studied medicine and was able to heal illnesses, he would not be able to refrain from being about the Torah when necessary to cure a sick person in Vilna. So, and he's well known also for saying that the most important branch of knowledge in order to understand Torah, which I don't appreciate, but people who know the branch of knowledge appreciate, is music. So in the Gra's perspective, the Misnagdish perspective, there is a value certainly to Chokhmas HaUmos. The question was, is it supposed to be a formal pursuit of Chokhmas HaUmos or an informal pursuit. And of course, in Lithuania, there was only one yeshiva which had limud echol as part of its formal curriculum. Initially, Volozhin did, but that was not a success, and the yeshiva closed as a result. There's a discrepancy between Chaim Berlin's account and Meir Berlin's account as to whether the yeshiva introduced limud echol and was closed down because they're not serious enough. That's Meir Berlin's account, and the account of the Chaim Berlin, which is they refused to introduce the limud echol and were therefore closed down summarily. But regardless, the first yeshiva to successfully, so to speak, incorporate limud echol in its program was the yeshiva in Lida, founded by Rabbi Yaakov Reines, where the Meitzah Eli was the Rosh Yeshiva before he came to America, and that was called Torah Das, Torah and Das. In case you're wondering, the Yeshiva Torah Das in New York was called Torah Das because one of its founders was Rabbi Wolf Gold, the prominent Rav in Williamsburg, who was an alumnus of the Yeshiva in Lida, Torah Das. And the other yeshivas in Lithuania were not necessarily gung-ho on this experiment, and some of them were in strong opposition to the Yeshiva Torah Das in Lida and its program. But again, as a part of the formal curriculum, the yeshivas in Lithuania, for the most part, the overwhelming majority, would not have countenanced limud echol, but the people learning in the yeshivas, many of them did pursue limud echol in an informal framework. Of course, in Germany, it was a whole different ballgame. There was perceived as integral to the development of what Risham Shavuot Hirsch called a Mensch Yisrael from an early stage of the person's development in a much more formal way. And of course, the Real Shul in Frankfurt, but other schools throughout the Germany were modeled with an integration from very early on of limud echol, which eventually became modeled for the Avrohom schools in Lithuania. But the idea was that this is part and parcel of the gestalt, the totality of a human being. So that's the Misnagdim. Hasidim, and this you find in Reb Tzadok, even though Reb Tzadok was conversing in limud echol, Chokhmas Chitzonius, they will find a strain of Tzadok Hasidim, not among all Hasidim, but among a significant number of Hasidic sources that Chokhmas Chitzonius are from the Sitra Achra, they're from the Klipos. They're not, there's something which is perhaps a necessary evil, but not something which should be encouraged, pursued, and certainly not part of a school system. And this distinction has become diminished over the years, but there is still some vestige of this in the different attitudes between Misnag and Chassidim to this very day, between limud echol, whether inside the formal system, outside the formal system, as to the advisability of the study of Chokhmas Chitzonius. So, Avrohom Eliyahu grew up in a really charged atmosphere where this was an issue from even Lithuania, but certainly coming to Germany, where all the students of the Hildesheimer Seminary, to the best of my knowledge, were also students of local universities. So the question became now a very acute one: how to have a proper perspective on the relationship between the limud echol and limud echol? Now, I use the limud echol and limud echol interchangeably, Chokhmas HaUmos, Chokhmas HaYisrael, even though they're not interchangeable, because limud echol and limud echol intrinsically means an educational program, and Chokhmas HaUmos, Chokhmas HaYisrael means a personal, can mean a personal pursuit. So therefore, there is a very different connotation, but we're going to use them interchangeably for our purposes. So all this is an introduction to our coming to this mimer, and the mimer itself divides into two parts. The first part is more of halachic analysis of the place of limud echol within the framework of an Oved Hashem's pursuit in life, and the second part will be more of an agadic perspective on the significance of limud echol. So, of course, we're starting with the first part first, and let's jump into the mimer. Tonight, we learned in the Mishnah in Chagiga. And I should say that before one other prefatory remark here is that in the asterisk at the bottom of the essay, it says this was part of the opening lecture for the 1922 school year in the base Medrash Rabbanim in the Hildesheim Seminary in Berlin. So this is obviously something which he said in front of the Talmidim. So the Mishnah Chagiga, the second paragraph Chagiga says, "Ein doshim b'arayos b'shlosh." You can't expound matters of arayos, of licentious behavior, illicit behavior, in front of three people. V'lo ma'aser beishis b'shnayim, nor to expound matters which have to do with the creation of the world in two. V'lo merkavad, nor matters which have to do with the heavenly vehicle by which Hashem is manifests Himself in this bria, even to an individual. Unless an individual is sagacious and understands things, intuits things on his own. Anybody looks at four things, four issues, it's better for him that he not have been born. Malamala, what's above; malamata, what's below; malafanim, what came before; malachara, comes afterwards. And these, of course, are questions which reference transcendence of the parameters of the Bria. What's above the Bria, what's below the Bria, what was before the Bria, what's after the Bria. And these are questions which are not completely answerable by us in our current situations, and therefore they are counterproductive. But Rabbi Avrohom is going to elaborate on this. The Rambam writes, listen to me, that which is clarified to me from my thoughts and from what I saw by the sages. They understand, what does Ma'aser Bereishis mean? Natural wisdom, what they used to be called in the old days, natural philosophy. And in-depth analysis of the beginning of existence. When they use the term Ma'aser Merkava, the activity of the chariot, Chokhmas Elokus, they're referring to the divine philosophy. Shua Dibur B'chol HaMetzius. This is the discussion of all matters of existence, not as they were made, but as they exist afterwards. Metzius Abari, the existence of a creator, B'yadiyaso, knowing him, B'torav, and the descriptions by which we know him. We know that's known. All of this was true. Perhaps at the time the Rambam this was, but every person by his nature has a yearning to pursue all manners and all areas of wisdom. Even if he's a person who's not too bright, or certainly if he's a bright person. For Adam al Kaplan, and a person, regardless of even whether he pursues it consciously or not, he thinks about these two Chokhmas, the Chokhmah of the Bria and the Chokhmah of the of Elokus, at the beginning of his thoughts. And he will extend his thought over them, even without any prior knowledge, without having achieved any levels of wisdom. So therefore, Chazal say, you know what, slow down. The people have a tendency to learn these things, even though they're not suitable to learn them, and not worthy of learning them, and not prepared to learn them. And he warns him, and therefore we said to frighten such a person. Somebody who starts considering matters which have to do with the beginning of the world, without any prior knowledge, without any introductions. Like we said, anybody looks at these four things, what was, what will be, what is above, what below, and he is obviously held in low esteem. According to this explanation, end quote for the Rambam. According to this explanation, comes out. The end of the Mishnah, it talks about the four, looking at the fourth Dvarim. It's going on as a continuation of the beginning of the Mishnah. It's as if he says, you shouldn't teach these things to a person unless he is a sagacious person who understands things on his own. Meaning that he has already the necessary prior knowledge. But he looks at these matters. Before he acquired for himself the prefatory knowledge, but then when he's still a beginner, As I really look at low below, it's better for him if he didn't come to the world. So that's the Rambam, and that's his understanding of the Rambam, I should say. But the Rabbi Avrohom says he named a bunch of periods that kosher b'lashon. It's difficult to sustain this in language. The answer does not seem to be what the Mishnah means at all. It seems to start a new thing at the end of the Mishnah. It calls a new name, the four things. She said, besides this difficulty, he named it the Seftim of Forish Heitev. The Seftim, that's quite clear. And the words of the Sefer are unique. Everybody who looks there will see that clearly. It's not here the place where we're going to spend a lot of time on inferences, says Rabbi Amelia. Gamer Vavadia Bartanura, in other words, trying to infer what exactly the meaning of Mishnah is. Gamer Vavadia Bartanura, but also Bartanura Chalaka Pesh Rama argues on the Rambam. But in terms of what Maisa Bracious is, and that the Bartanura does not argue the Rambam. It seems that he concedes them that Maisa Bracious are the natural philosophy. So we have to know much lower something which I have not seen anybody mention. In the Yerushalmi is clear. It's not like this Mishnah which forbids expounding on the creation of the world in public. Mishnah Zu Rabbi Akiva. This Mishnah, we're on page Chokhmas now. Mishnah Zu Rabbi Akiva. This Mishnah is Rabbi Akiva's Mishnah. Shmuel argues and permits it. Look, Rabbi Shmuel was there. Looks like Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi Asa Maisa V'Darsh Barabim. Yehuda ben Pazi actively manifested the perspective of Rabbi Shmuel and taught Maisa Bracious in public. That's clear in the Yerushalmi. For Rabbeinu Tam, B'Taisus Piresh, Rabbeinu Tam gives a different interpretation. Maisa Bracious is the name of 42 letters. It's interesting that it's the Russian table. So Maisa Bracious are mem base. So obviously, there's something there about that. I was trying to work it out. So Rambam to Chokhmas Abriya. It's clear that it's like the Rambam. It's the body of knowledge about creation. The Zoya Ronech Badal Maisa, and this is an important psak in practice, which is that we don't paskin like our Mishnah. We paskin, you can teach Maisa Bracious Barabim. However, but Maisa Merkava, who perish our Dvarim, in terms of what Maisa Merkava is, and explaining the four issues or questions, but say for the end of the Mishnah, so almost everybody goes in the Rambam. Rak Ramah vidas Rambam zalach. Only the Ramah brings down the Rambam le'alocha. Uv'ksashinu slightly differently. V'zel shon. This is what the Ramah says. Ein la the Ramah in Yerodea Simon Reshim Vav Sip Dalin. He says Ein la dam limod ki mikra Mishnah Gemara. But poskim shochem achreim. Person just learn Tanakh, Mishnayos, Gemara, and the poskim will come after that. But zeikne oilam hazeh v'olam haba. But that is to require this world and the world to come. Avalo b'lim muchar Chokhmas, but not by learning other Chokhmas. Mekomcha nevertheless mutzar limo ba'krai. You're allowed to learn on occasion, informally, shar Chokhmas. Bachelor the Sifri Minim, as long as they are books of heretics. Zeo nikra ben chachomim til b'pardes. And going into other Chokhmos, the Ramah defines as going to Pardes, which is not the Pashim Shad that everybody learns in Gemara Chagiga about Arba Nichlus to the Pardes, where it's assumed to mean some sort of meditational trance in which a person goes up to Lama Soyonim. He's saying Likonis Pardes means to go into Chokhmos Chisonios, go into external wisdom. The Vumidivrei. I'm sorry, because the Bir Agra Zal, Agra says, Mash Amar Komka Mutu Limo Bakrai Shar Chokhmos, the Pardes. This is that you're allowed to learn on occasion of the Chokhmos, and that's called Pardes. Humidivya Rambam. That's in the Rambam. Avalorus a Pardes Lahuvalo Rambam. But either the Rambam or the Rambam, so the Pardes, which is interesting because the Ramah is a bit of a makubal. But the Ramah has this famous correspondence with the Marshal and their chuvas. The Marshal rebuked the Ramah for learning secular philosophy, and the Ramah said, I only learn on Shabbos when everybody else is taking their Shabbos spatzir, they're taking their walk out in the park. I learn philosophy. But in any event, the Gra was very, very adamant that paradise does not mean what the Rambam and the Ramah take it to mean. V'lashon haramayim matukan, and besides, the Gra continues. The language of Ramah doesn't really make sense. Shimzeu paradise. If this is paradise, Echamar aval lo yumod ela bakrai. Right? Why you say you should learn occasionally. The other Chokhmas. Hello, ein lecha kibul schar yosem mizeh. There's no greater reward than Tilba Pardes. In other words, whatever Pardes is, Chachamim make a big deal out of it. So, if you're going to call this Tilba Pardes, you can't say, you can only learn Bakrai. And if you say, this is really Pardes, why would you only learn Bakrai? This is a huge, essential, if not the most significant part of Torah. Okay, that's the gross question. The Rabbi Avrohom goes on. He asks also, "Okay, Shali, it's so significant. I look at Ramaz al Sadin Shabakrai Mutar. How do Ramaz take this? Come to this conclusion that if it's on occasion, it happens. It's okay, but if it's consistent, it's also." Which, of course, would be in line with what we described earlier as the non-Torah V'das, Snagdish approach that should not be part of the formal education system. But I think the Ramah is correct after analysis. And I find a source in the Sifri in Dvarim Vav Zayin says here. That, by the way, the Ramah is here, that's in Rishman Vav Sif Dalet. V'dibarta says you should speak in them. Of course, it's in Shema. Hasem ikar ba'al ta'asem tefillah. Sorry. Make words of Torah primary and don't make them secondary. Shleim masam ancha elayim. Your give and take should only be in Divrei Torah. Shlotar bar macher. You should not mix in other things. Shlotar, I shouldn't say lamati Chokhmas Yisrael. I learned the Chokhmah of the Jewish people. Elch v'emar Chokhmas umas olam. Now I'll go and I'll study the Chokhmah of the umas olam. In other words, Torah I'm finished with. I mastered it. Now I'm going to go Chokhmas umas. They can't do that. That would be shalom bakrai. That would be an absolute dedication. You walk in them. Words of Torah. And not to excuse yourself and remove yourself from them. Ubasifra, in the Vayikra, it says, you're not allowed to exempt yourself from the words of Torah. So we have from the Sifri 4 halachas. Aleph, the Torah ikar v'lo tefillah. Torah should be primary, not secondary. Beis masam rakba, that your discourse, your engagement should only be in it. Gimel, not to mix in other things. Not to mix in other things. Something we're going to come back to later on. Dal shelo yomar, a person say kfar gamarti so week. I completed the Chokhmas Yisrael. Chokhmas Torah. Go and learn the wisdom of the next world without Torah. When we come to define well these 4 things, we find, Chachamim allowed other forms of learning as secular studies as subordinate, secondary importance. That's what Ramah writes. On occasion and happenstance, not as a consistent, certainly not as a primary occupation, it's okay. The second halacha explains what does it mean, what's primary, what's secondary. You are give and take should only be in them. Perish, meaning your pursuit in life, the transactions of your life, should be in Divrei Torah. That's your primary pursuit. But when it comes in front of you a matter which concerns a different type of knowledge, you can analyze it as a subordinate, as a secondary significance, as much as you need for it. Yotze Zekum, the emergency condition, Shayadam Lamed as Hascholos, as Hascholos, as Yichos Chokhmat Tveilein. Obviously, it comes out that you're allowed to study the necessary prerequisites for this for studying this Chokhmah. You can go on stuff such as languages. So you got to start on the original Greek. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Shemali came. If not, you won't be able to do them even by chance, even by happenstance. Shem Shadas is a stuff about cry. You can't know knowledge by happenstance. It needs work and toil. So a fascinating thing comes out. Even though the ikar pursuit of other studies should be by cry, but that's after you already master the preliminaries. The third law teaches us, and this is something which is going to be significant. Shelo la'arev not the mixing with Torah other things. And says Avrohom, this is what Chazal called in Avos Per Gimel and other places, Gilui Panim B'Torah Shelo K'Halacha. Being brazen in Torah, not according to halacha. Means biurim b'torah Torah, explanation of Torah she'ein l'fi Torah, which are not according to the Torah. But rather based on theories, hypotheses which come from outside it. Torah is its own system, and this is a fundamental principle which Avrohom will come back to later on when he expands on the theology, so to speak, of the issue. The fourth law teaches us, even learn other disciplines as on occasion. Like Rama says, or as subordinate, secondary interest. Like the Sifri says, don't say now I'm exempt from learning Chokhmas. Even that time, you should completely plant it in the field of Chokhmas Yisrael. Me'enyein huliros biuro shel Reb Shamshol Hirsch Zal hamatim lepsak zeh. Avrohom knew, obviously, who didn't know even Lithuania by the 1920s, who Reb Shamshol Hirsch was and what he represented, and it's appropriate, obviously, to bring him down in this context. The biur of Reb Shamshol Hirsch, it was appropriate for this psak. Shaloli pater mitochan, not to release yourself from them. Asher gamas came on feim madachim, even involved in other forms of knowledge, other disciplines. Lo nazniach lo lames yisrael Torah matrosa. Will never forsake the foundation of Torah and its purpose. V'lohen lebadon, and to them alone, to the Torah, to the Torah, the avodah of our spirit, not our intellect. The avodah of our spirit should be devoted. And you're not allowed to ever leave. The spirit of Torah has to underlie everything you do with your intellect, even in other pursuits. Okay, that is the end of the first part of the mimer. And of course, he elaborated on the four conditions. Torah should be primary, not secondary. That should be your primary pursuit, your masa matan, not to mix in other things. And a person shouldn't say, I finished Chokhmas, so now I'm going to go Chokhmas HaUmos. The next part of the mimer begins, I'm just going to read the question, and then we'll leave, of course, the understanding for later on. Mai Chokhmas HaUmos umai Chokhmas Yisrael. Okay, what's Chokhmas HaUmos and what's Chokhmas Yisrael? Is a simple divide between secular studies or natural philosophy and Chokhmas Yisrael and the Torah? We'll have to see. I'm going to stop here for today. And this in the Sefer, this point in the mimer is demarcated by two dots horizontally, but two dots not two dots vertically, but two dots horizontally, 2 stars. And so clearly denoting that the rest of the mimer is a separate piece.